given everything, so you can be kingdom fit.
What's going on, Kingdom Warriors? I hope everything is going great with you and your families. In this video, I want to continue on what I was talking about in my last one about treasuries, but I wanted to touch on the tariff piece and how I think it's a part of this whole overall plan that Donald Trump and the US government has to fix a lot of the damage that's been done in prior administrations and years. So I'm just going off the assumption that I personally believe that there has been a lot of false actors within our government. And part of the plan was, in short, to pretty much bring down America by purposely running up the national debt and by purposely sending jobs offshore and just kind of moving the legs out from the economy to make it really shaky so that it will be too hard to recover. And there's a real effort right now to fix that. I think on the surface, we understand the tariff piece, but there's another layer to it that I feel like the Holy Spirit highlighted to me. So we all understand that when we charge tariffs for people to import their services and goods into our country, we're pretty much charging a fee for them to do that. And they've been touting the numbers and we're making this many $billion off of that. And that's great. However, there's another piece where they're also putting a lot of incentives in place for businesses and for companies to begin to build things in America again. We've seen that with they want silicone chips to be manufactured here. There's been a lot of investment into artificial intelligence. All sorts of things have been slipped into these bills that incentivize us to manufacture here. Now, I talked about in my last video how when the world begins to get shaky and inflation happens and a lot of those things that scare people, we tend to run to commodities, things that are tangible that people need, right? Physical things and things that we all need oil, right, to run our vehicles. We all need medical services are a big one, obviously gold and silver, things like that. But you have to ask yourself, that's on an individual level, right? As someone who's taking care of a family, those are things that you can invest in. But what does that look like in terms of countries? What are things that countries would run to and rely on in shaky times? Well, some of those things still are the same, such as precious metals, and we've seen that for sure. There's been a tremendous amount of people buying bullion countries. But another one that I think a lot of people miss is actually manufacturing. And I touched on this in my last video, but you want to be a economy that is not service based, right? But that is manufacturing based, meaning you're making physical things that solve problems. It's extremely important. Now, we could not compete in this way in the past, and the reason is because of regulation. So if you look at China, you'll see that they have absolutely really increased in terms of just their economy. And one of the primary ways they've been able to do that is because they make everything for everyone in the world. You guys may have seen earlier this year, it came out when the tariffs started happening with some of the high-end luxury goods like the Louis Vuitton and the Burberry and those really expensive things that people like to wear. It came out that the same people that were making the knockoffs in China were actually making the real products as well for those companies. And because of the way that the laws are, they would make, let's say, a Louis Vuitton purse, right? They would get it 95% done. They would send it to France or Paris or wherever it says it's made at. And they would put on maybe that last button that has their name on it. And because of that, they could say it was manufactured in Paris. And then they would send it to America. So the reason why, one of the primary reasons why everyone likes to get things made in China is because essentially there's almost legal slave labor there, right? They have sweatshops. You guys may have seen there was actually an iPhone factory in China that was on the news, and they put net around the top of the building because so many people were trying to jump off and commit suicide because they were locked in there and they were forced to make phones, right? So in a country like America, especially where there's so much legal overhead, so much oversight, minimum wage, you cannot compete with someone like China, even with the cost of shipping it across the ocean and bringing it here. Because they don't have those labor laws and things in place, no one can compete with them. However, the first piece is the tariffs is taxing those people to bring things in. The second piece is incentivizing a lot of companies in America to open new shops, open new factories, and different things like that. And we've seen that. But here's the play that I believe we're missing. There is a shortage of jobs right now. We've seen that, and we do need more jobs. However, I believe within a very short amount of time, probably as quickly as 5 years, a tremendous amount of those jobs are actually going to be completely automated with the advances in artificial intelligence and AI technology and robots and things like that. So why would that help us? Well, robots are not subjective to slave labor laws. A robot doesn't have to work an 8-hour shift and then clock out and take a break. A robot doesn't have to only drive a truck for a certain amount of hours, pull over to rest stop and sleep, right? So once the AI automation comes into place, America actually will be able to compete with countries like China because we no longer have to be cognizant of the labor laws of people. However, if that infrastructure is not already in place, then when this happens, and it's going to happen very quickly, we're not going to be able to pivot quickly enough and we're going to lose even more ground. So as I mentioned before, right now we're relying on the dollar. That's what makes us strong. That's what allows us to be the world reserve power and things like that. But as the dollar continues to lose its value, we need something to pivot to, which I don't believe we've had previously. And I believe that's really the end game of the tariff piece, is kind of putting all the incentives in place to bringing the manufacturing back to America. So everything is in place. So when it becomes automated, we can actually compete. Because in the future, what it looks like for a country to protect themselves from what's happening is to have a strong manufacturing economy. And we can actually do that if we're going to have AI and robots, and we can compete with China in that way. So I believe that's actually a big part of the whole tariff plan, what's really going on. It's not so much about getting money from the imports, although that helps. It's more so about incentivizing people to do it in America, because now we can compete with the cost of it, right? And so I think that that's really important. And I think that's really what the end game is. You just have to consider America is really respected in some ways for its manufacturing. Although we can compete in certain things, we also have a lot of regulation in place. We test for a lot of things like forever chemicals, the FDA. There's all sort of regulatory compliance in place so that although we don't offer the best price, we are more so known in many industries for the highest quality products, right? That made in America thing. You're going to get the highest quality version of it. So being that we already have that regulatory oversight in place in terms of things that are in the food and testing for it, although it can get better, and I think it will with RFK Jr. in charge, we tend to be in that particular area a lot better in terms of our manufacturing. The problem was we couldn't compete because of what we had to pay human beings to do it. So I think when you combine our regulatory oversight of our manufacturing, and now with the fact that it will be automated with AI, and you bring them together, that makes us a real competitor. But right now there's a race to start to get that manufacturing done. And so I believe that's what the tariff piece is really about. And we will see on the days to come if that's actually executed properly and if it works. But that's the end game, in my opinion. The US dollar is going to be replaced with something that is sustainable and that is real, which is American manufacturing, bringing it back like it used to be when we went through the industrial age, when many cars were made in Chicago and all the different things, the drill baby drill we've heard about. They're trying to start to drill in America again. And that's what I believe the end game is. And I believe it could work, but I would encourage you guys definitely pray into that and pray for that. And this affects the world. I know many of you may not be from America, but the reality is what is important about America is our Constitution, right? It's the sovereignty, the same thing that the Bible says we have, the sovereignty to have rights, right? To do what you want with your life, to make a decision and do it. It's the place you can go when you want to escape communism, right? I saw on the news a few months ago where these two refugees from Cuba, they literally created a kite glider, and it had like a big lawnmower engine on it and a propeller in the back. And I don't know how they made this thing, but they flew that thing from Cuba and they landed right at the airport on the runway. And I just thought it was so funny. But at the same time, you just think to yourself, when people are willing to do that and risk their lives, if that thing putters out, you fall in the ocean and you're just going to drown. People literally try to come here on rafts. And what they want is sovereignty, because it's something that God placed inside of us that we have a desire for, right? We want to be able to choose what we do with our own lives. We should have rights. We should have those freedoms. And although they're trying to take them away slowly, those are things we need to pray for and we need to fight for. Because if America goes down, we are kind of like the last lampstand, the last lamppost that really stands on those things. And it's a war for sure. So I would encourage you guys. It's not so much about America being the best. I know a lot of countries around the world look at Americans as fat and happy and spoiled. And in a lot of ways we are, right? And I don't think America should be a superpower in terms of having better opportunities. I do like the idea of everyone having equality. When I say equality, I'm not talking about based on what you put in. Okay. I think that if you work hard, you should be compensated for it fairly is what I mean when I say equality, but definitely capitalism as well, right? Everybody should have that opportunity. If you have a gift that God placed inside of you, you should be able to bring it to the marketplace. You should be able to offer it to the world and you should be compensated fairly for it. And America is one of the last places that can happen. So I feel that it's important that we all pray on behalf of this and just for God's will to be done. All right. So I hope this video makes sense. I hope it blessed you guys. Remember, we are all sons and daughters of the Most High God. So whatever you do, be royal, and I will catch you guys next time. Be blessed.
I see you.